Okay, hi everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for The Well-Rounded Musician with Alexa Tarantino at our new time slot. Hope the people that are getting up at 2 a.m. now only have to get up at 1 a.m. Um, but we appreciate you being with us for our, what I believe is our eighth or ninth installment of The Well-Rounded Musician. I've lost track. My name is Chloe Joy Fogel. I am the video editor here at Jess Lincoln Center, and I'll be moderating this evening as per usual. Today, Alexa is joined by trombonist, composer, educator, and entrepreneur Nick Finzer. They will discuss what it means to be a well-rounded musician and how they've been making the most out of this quarantine. We will then open it up to questions from all of you. If you're watching on Facebook, please feel free to put your questions in the comments there. And if you're here on Zoom, please feel free to use the comment section here or raise your hand when we open it up for questions, and we will unmute you so that you can ask your question directly to Alexa and Nick. I'll jump back in and give a bit of a spiel when that time comes, but for now, we hope you all enjoy this episode of The Well-Rounded Musician with Alexa Tarantino and Nick Finzer, and I'll turn it over to Alexa.
Thanks, Chloe. Hi, everybody. Happy Thursday again, back with The Well-Rounded Musician. I have to look back and see. I don't know what number we're on. It might be 10. But either way, so happy to see you all. Thanks for adjusting with our permanent time change, and hope spread the word to anybody who maybe missed out. But I'm so excited to have one of my best friends and someone who's been an inspiration to me since the beginning of my professional career, trombonist Nick Finzer. And we usually spend a lot of time together in July anyway, because he spends 2 weeks with me teaching at my summer jazz workshop. And so while we can't be together in person, I'm so glad he was available to tune in tonight. Nick, thanks for joining.
Yeah, hi Alexa. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
So this is our second installment with a special guest. And last week we heard from Ulysses Owens Jr., and we've just been chatting about what it means to be well-rounded. So many jazz musicians have such a wide range of what they do and areas they're involved in, and you're somebody that I think the audience can really learn from in terms of keeping multiple things in the air all the time, and kind of creating avenues of work and of revenue for yourself that wouldn't have existed otherwise. So why don't we just get started? Why don't you tell us what you've been up to in quarantine?
Oh, well, now that it's been so many months, there's been a lot of things that I've been up to in quarantine, I guess. But the couple of highlights is I put out an etude book a couple of months ago. I released a record right at the beginning of quarantine, so I've been kind of celebrating that album throughout the last 4 months or so. It's called Cast of Characters. And then I recently, you mentioned having my fingers in a lot of pies. I did a jazz camp of my own for jazz trombonists, and we had a bunch of great trombonists on there to connect with students from all over the country, which was really amazing. And then most recently, I also run a record label and media company called Outside in Music, and we totally kind of revamped our business model and had a chance to kind of revisit a lot of things that I've been waiting for time to do. And it was always like, this far down the list, and I got that far down the list now. So I got a chance to finally do those low list items.
Awesome. Yeah. And if I know you now, you have a whole other list of things
Don't give
to
away my secrets.
um, so yeah, so I met, I guess we'll give a little bit of backstory. So Nick and I know each other via the Eastman School of Music, but we weren't actually there at the same time. And so
Right.
I think this is a really good example for anybody who's tuned in with me since the beginning, when I was talking about really, creating a positive reputation for yourself and your community, contributing positively to your community, and keeping a contact database, and really, not in a like manipulative or sort of premeditated way, but really just trying to make sure you're connecting with people and keeping those relationships strong and going. And so I guess Nick and I were introduced through your other nonprofit, right?
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. We've got multiple companies.
I got a lot of things going on. Yeah. I
So
started it. Yeah.
yes, yeah. So you were a few years ahead of me, but then I don't know. I guess we just kept running into each other, and then I remember you asked me to play tenor with your band in Rochester, which was
That's
something
true.
I never do anymore. But that's also an example of saying yes to the gig, and so it's just a really interesting friendship and I guess business relationship that I think that demonstrates a lot of these qualities that we've talked about, which is awesome. So in line with our show title, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what being a well-rounded musician means to you. If you think it's beneficial, if you think it's maybe not beneficial in some ways, some of the struggles, some of the positives, whatever comes to mind.
Yeah, I guess I have a couple of thoughts about this that are, I suppose, almost contradictory, but I've thought about this a lot because as a trombonist, and I mean, it's the same for you, I'm sure, but you know, coming through Eastman, it was always kind of harped on like the skills, basic music skills to be able to work as a musician. So, sight reading, playing in all styles, and all that stuff. And all during my undergrad, I was just saying yes to everything, like Alexa was saying, and say yes and play as many different gigs and as many different opportunities and start a nonprofit and do all the things that you have no idea how to do and jump in and like get super experienced at all these different things. And I guess my experience with that was really great. And I made myself really learn a lot about a lot of things really quickly. And kind of get a wide sense of what it means to play in different styles. I've always been an educator. I've always taught. I've always had a studio of students since I was in high school. And to keep all those things going, I guess I saw a lot of people that were complaining a lot about their, I don't know, space in life, perhaps, where they were. And I was like, well, I don't think that's for me. I don't want to be just like that. And I struggled for a long time to find someone that really, had all of their fingers in all of these different places while I was at Eastman. Since moving to New York, I was like, those people are there. And when I got to Juilliard for my master's, that's when I really started to maybe change a little bit my thoughts about should you be totally well-rounded or really specialized in some way. And I think it has a lot to do with your goals, and it has a lot to do with what you want out of your life and out of your career. At a certain point, and it's a very more recent point, not that long ago, trying to make a choice of trying to be hired to be me and not hired to be trombone guy that sits over there, and it took me a long time to realize that there was a difference. And so now I try, I'm also a professor at the University of North Texas. And so with my students, I try to have them think about developing both as an artist and as a craftsman. And so that's kind of how I think about it in terms of being able to play all the gigs, do all the things, do the teaching, maybe get your fingers into some other, non-playing teaching things. And then also thinking about your artistry, like, do you want to be an artist? Not everybody has something to say as a leader. Some people are great side people and aren't necessarily drawn to that position. So I think you have to do a lot of self-reflection to kind of figure out what is it you want. And I think at the beginning you have to say yes and get all the experience and try all the stuff. And then at some point you have to decide what direction you're going to be in. Because for me, I just realized from being around such talented people in New York that it's like there's a specialist in every tiny little like micro scene, right? It's like on trombone, like somebody that really does trad, really does like super avant-garde and everything in between. And I had to kind of figure out where my place was, because I knew that I could not to say compete, but like not also work alongside these people that are clearly going to get called because their specialty is like whatever 1950s bebop oriented stuff, So I kind of see both sides of it. I try to present both sides to my students. And then with the third kind of wheel, with kind of the more like business oriented stuff that I do, I always tell people it's like, you really don't have to be into that sort of thing. But like my dad was a businessman and entrepreneur growing up. And so I think I just saw that kind of spirit. And it just comes naturally to me to want to do those things. I don't have to like try that hard to say, oh, I want to spend time doing this, because it's like it's another interest, all those things, you know, thinking about marketing and branding and bringing value to people through your content, whether that's music or something else. So, you know, I don't know. I probably shouldn't be doing as many things as I am, but I like the feeling of having a lot of things going on. So I feel like it helps me thrive. When I've got nothing going on, nothing gets done. The more craziness is happening, I feel like the more I'm able to kind of focus and make it happen. So that
Yeah.
was a long answer to your question, but
Ooh, you just used our little show tagline there, make it happen. Nice. I didn't even have to like pay you to do that. Nailed it. For anybody just joining on Facebook or on Zoom, welcome back to the Well-Rounded Musician at our new time slot, 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. We're chatting with Nick Finzer, who's a all over the world trombonist, composer, educator, specifically a professor at University of North Texas, and also an entrepreneur, has multiple companies under his belt. One is a media company called Outside in Music, and the other is a nonprofit called Institute for Creative Music. And Nick and I connected via Rochester and the Easton School of Music. And you can catch him playing, well, I guess, if you know, in real life. He's toured all over with people like the Jazz Lincoln Center Orchestra, Anat Cohen Tentet, all of his groups, just so much happening. So I'm very happy to have you with us, and let's continue on. So
yep.
I loved what you said about artist versus craftsman. I think that's really cool. And I agree with the whole, I mean, my dad is also similarly very entrepreneurial, so I think I sort of got that bug as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, do you have specific, because I mean, I always feel like I have a lot going on, and then you're the person that I think of like, okay, well, Nick is doing all of this, so like, get it together, Alexa. So what do you have in your daily routine that you like have to get done to make things happen, to make things move in motion? Like, I know you love to run, but like throw that in there, and other stuff that you do to get you in your best mindset for working, or any tips in terms of productivity that you might have.
Yeah, I go on and off again on this. Like, I know I've figured out a few things that work well for me. One is just like reminding myself that email is like a defense mechanism to make you feel busy or feel like you're doing something. So I try to, I really, really try to, sometimes it doesn't work, try to do something creative first in the morning. I've switched between like trying to work out first or doing something creative, but especially during this time, I found like writing music, writing words, practicing, something like that, like first thing in the morning really does help me get centered for the day. And I know that like, the day's probably not going to end up the way I thought it was when I started. So I've started making my like to-do lists for the next day the night before. I've been reading a lot more than usual, which has been great. So some little tips and tricks from different books I've been reading, talking about just like setting an intention the night before really is helpful for me. And I try to think about like just one thing that I need to get done during a day that will make me say by the end of the day, like that was a successful day. So it's like if I get that one thing done, then I'm cool, and I can like go into various places wherever the day might take me. But that's been super helpful, is like focusing on being creative first thing, and then I'll just go until I'm kind of out of ideas, I guess. So a couple hours maybe, but and then I run. I've been trying to get back into running for a while, and I've had the chance now. So now I've been running like, I don't know, 6 or 7 miles a day, which has been good for me because, and it's also really hot because I've been in Texas since March, since all this happened, and it's like 100 degrees here, so I'm not used to it. Definitely, as an East Coast boy, I'm not used to this like Texas heat, man. It's pretty crazy. But so those two things, you know, I feel like I always have something in my life, like since college, like, and I think at that time it was practicing, that there's like a certain anxiety level that I have until I do that thing, and then it kind of calms down. So I think that might be not the healthiest thing, perhaps, but it helps me to push along, you know. So yeah, I don't have like a specific daily morning routine or anything like that, but it's just like I've found that going to that creative thing first has really kind of made me feel better, you know, just like, even though maybe I'm like, oh, I should go on my email. I'm like, no, Nick, Don't go on your email. Keep your emails closed and
Yeah.
do something. And then you can do it later. It'll still be there. So,
Yeah. Email will always be there. It's very
yeah.
overwhelming. Um, and what about, do you ever, I mean, do you get in periods of burnout or feeling like you need to take a break? How do you manage that? I mean, do you ever let yourself just completely stop? How do you plan for that or deal with that?
Yeah, I try to plan in breaks to stop. I think because I'm doing so many different things, I'm able to just be like, all right, I'm stopping this and I'm putting my energy in this other thing, and it feels like a break, even though I'm still doing something. I have a hard time with even on vacation, like not doing stuff. And like at camp, I'm like working every time I have a break and this and that. And I don't know. My dad is the same way. So I don't know if it's a good thing, but it's kind of a learned behavior perhaps, or an intuitive behavior. But um, like I said, like I have this anxiety of like something that's in the back of my mind. And once I do it, then I'm cool and I can just hang and do whatever. But there's just like a certain amount of things that I feel like I want to get done. Like I feel everybody has the same 24 hours, but like I guess this goes back. Like I was never super gifted as a young musician. I had really had to work a lot, like hard. I felt harder than everybody else, probably the same as everybody else. But as when you're in your own head,
Yeah.
I so I always felt like I had to work really hard to get it. So that fear is always on the back shoulder, kind of like somebody's working and you're not.
You're not, yeah, I have
You're
that.
not. So yeah.
Oh gosh. So then along those lines of, for up and coming or emerging musicians, what advice would you give to them, either in terms of that or in terms of your experiences, maybe what would you say not to do? Yeah, that you've learned.
I guess the thing I usually go back to is that I spent so much time doing that I didn't develop as many great relationships with my peers at Eastman in particular as I could have. I was filling up all my time trying to work and do gigs and stuff and projects. And I have a lot of great connections still from Eastman, but there's a lot of people that I'm like, why didn't I never get to know that person? That person is a great musician and great person, and I should have. So sometimes when I look back, I definitely feel like I held the standard up too high in terms of working versus like making sure to be part of the scene. Maybe some of you don't have that issue, but if you are a person that feels like compelled to be in the practice room, just make sure to try to balance out, everything, meaning developing those relationships, because you never know, when you're going to need someone to ask their opinion or to figure out what to do next, or for some kind of advice. And it's you know super important to have that Rolodex like you were talking about, of just people, just to be around great people. So I think about that a lot. I think about not a lot, but when I'm thinking about things I would change, I think about not being so impatient. I've just kind of like tried to have like a list of like all the things I wanted to try to play, in New York. I want to do this gig, this, blah, 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 blah. And I blew through them all. And then I was like, oh, okay, I guess now I need to figure out what I actually want to do with my life. And, so having a little bit more patience and just letting things come as they will and kind of just focus on the music. Things like that. That's a big problem for me. It's just being impatient and having too many things going on. It's like it's a blessing and a curse. I feel like I wouldn't trade anything that I did because it led me, to have some kind of momentum in my life. But at the same time, when I look back, I'm like, oh, I could have like been more social, or I could have like gone to more hangs, and so, I think there's a balance for everybody, and you have
Yeah.
to figure out what that is. And I think it's the same with playing and everything. You have to find your own personal balance. There's no one right way to do this. With the industry is nothing like it was when our heroes were growing up, or coming up. And it's like, in some ways for the better, in some ways there's less opportunities. So you kind of have to figure out a new path. And I guess, that circles back around to, the theme of the show is just like, you have to do more than just play a lot of the times. Not everybody does, but, I think of someone like Wynton Marsalis as being, he equally has his hands in so many things, and like plays so well, and such amazing visionary and speaker and writer, and does all the, so when I think of someone in our world of this music, you know, he's a person I'm like, man, that's something to aspire to be able to do all of that and keep the music happening at such a high level. So
Right.
for me, that's like a new level to try to reach to someday.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I agree. So with this idea of getting to a new level, after COVID and quarantine, I think, you know, the jazz and music, many industries in general are going to be changed. What do you see happening after this, you know, as things start to open up? What are you trying to, without giving away your secrets, what are you working on to kind of keep that momentum going in this time of no live gigs and no tours?
Yeah, I mean, I have been a person that's been uh, on the opinion of the opinion that having a robust online situation is really important. And I've been doing that since like 2016, 2015, really focused on it. And I think that this particular, you know, moment in time has led to other people realizing that. I mean, I've been running like online education stuff for a long time, and now people are more willing to take advantage of those opportunities because, you know, for a long time I think people just had a kind of a negative opinion about what maybe you could do with music online, and so I'm for one happy to be able to connect with more people more easily now. After that, I think this has a lasting effect in terms of where people maybe decide to study music because they can get access to anyone and everybody, not everyone, but a lot of people have maximized their, you know, setups at home and are able to connect with students from anywhere. And, you know,
Yeah.
for me, I really think that that's opened up a lot of opportunities in that way. You know, I've had other conversations with other people that are just kind of, I'm sick of the remote videos. I'm sick of this. And it's like, yeah, of course we are. But I think that, you know, there's a lot of skills of integrating technology that jazz musicians tend to put to the side or find not important. And this has given them a chance to try and see if those things are worth exploring, you know, other sounds, other styles, other, you know, ways of integrating spoken word or, you know, just any creative stuff. So I think there's going to be a lot of more freedom in your ability to express different things with technology after this. You know, I think things about the economics of streaming, people have finally been like, hey, wait a minute, like I need to figure something out here. We can't just keep doing the same thing. It's not really working. I've been reading a lot of articles about not just, you know, within our sphere of artists, but within, you know, megastars and the kind of money that they'd be making. And
Right.
it's just not anything. It's just not basically nothing. So anyway, so I think there's a lot of pent up issues that people are starting to deal with, you know, across the board. And I think that it's no different in terms of our industry. And I think it's going to potentially weed out some of the people, you know, that maybe weren't sure if they wanted to do this. And, you know, everyone always says, not everyone again, but I hate speaking in absolutes. I'm trying not to do that. A lot of people that maybe were on the fence about whether they should go into this music studies, pay $100,000 for a degree in this music, maybe will think, oh, maybe I should go somewhere that's a little more affordable, or maybe I should learn this music on the computer from the person that I love to listen to, like Alexa Tarantino, rather than like paying 100 grand for a degree. So I think it's opening people's eyes again to a lot of different things, and I just hope people won't let it get them down and will try to make music of the moment. And if that means it's music by yourself, you know, I've been thinking a lot because I run a record label and thinking about what's going to happen, you know, in 6 months, because there's still records coming out now, but nobody's recorded anything since March. And
Right.
so next March, what is there going to be to put out except for projects that people made at home, which is like, man, like you can do a lot of stuff, but if you focus on what you can't do, you're not going to do anything. So if you focus on what you could do, you might be able to find something interesting. So I hope people take advantage of the time to try to create something interesting that they wouldn't have done otherwise, you know. That's kind of, yeah, again, long answer, but
Oh, that's
some
great.
things I'm thinking about.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like I've been spending a lot of my time coming up with or working more on the business side of things, like trying to make this event happen and promoting the online jazz camp and whatever it might be. And so it's nice to, it's inspiring to think about all the different things you can do. I mean, I'm still learning Logic. I'm like the total
Right.
noob
Yeah.
with all that stuff. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. And some of the projects that I see people, even just clips that people put out, it's amazing. So yeah, we'll see what happens. The one question that it's not something that we talked about, but this whole idea of everybody being home, students are always asking me, and I'm sure they're always asking you, do I have to move to New York right away? Like, should I go to college in New York? Is it okay if I stay at my, local state school and then go to New York? And so you are someone who's been pretty much like bi-coastal for the last year. And I don't know if you want to share anything about managing that, balancing that. What do you think? I mean, moving forward, do people need to be in New York to make this happen?
I mean, I think a little bit, I feel like that's yet to be seen in terms of how the city comes back in 6 months or a year. I mean, right now, there's no reason to be in New York if you're a jazz musician. You can't do anything. You can't play with anybody. I've been thinking about that and like, man, that's so weird because it was the destination in my mind for so long.
Yeah.
But I don't know. As a person that I wanted to go to New York for my undergrad so badly, so badly. I wanted to go to Juilliard. I wanted to get in. I was studying with Wycliffe Gordon. He was teaching there at the time. And I didn't get in. And I was crushed at the time. But then it just put me on a path of like vengeance. It's like, I am going to go there for my master's. And I even took a whole year off after my school at the time at my undergrad to just focus on trying to do that one audition. And luckily it worked out. But, I think you also need time to develop as a musician to have any sort of context. When I see the undergrads, at least during my time at Juilliard, there's a lot of things that they weren't going to learn from there because the experience of the school was just totally different. And things that I find important as a musician that wants to be able to work in the scene as well as be a great soloist or front person, I'm sure it's probably evolved since then. It's been a long time already somehow. But I think it was better for me to not be in New York. And when I think back to it, I'm like, man, I would have gotten swallowed up and spit out because I was sad. So it's like I needed time to like get it together. And I didn't think that I did, but I did. And so for me, that was the right thing. So I think that you can go anywhere at this point and get your school. I do think at a certain point you do need to be in the place where all those super serious people are, though, for at least some point. There's something about New York drummers that, like, in particular, not just them, but like, there's a different thing. And you go anywhere and you're playing with the most killing person from somewhere, and you're like, yeah, they're great, but it's not the same. And I think it comes from just the social part of living there and being stacked on top of each other and being so dedicated to wanting to be there because it's hard to just be there and live. So you have to want to do it, So anyway, I think anyone that wants to seriously study this music should go there for some period of time. I think personally, if that's the style of music you want to play, but in terms of school, I don't think it's 100% necessary. I know some of the schools in New York are so expensive, and if I could go back, I will circle back. I would have a better idea of what I was getting for the money I was paying for college. That's one thing that I forgot to mention.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. So what has it been like for you balancing going back and forth, to the East Coast for gigs? I mean, I know you would tour a lot as well, and then kind of putting your professor hat on in Texas and managing all that.
Yeah, so I've been kind of doing the same balancing act since 2014. From 14 to 16, I was teaching at Florida State University and doing the same kind of trying to be everywhere at once. It forced me, the whole experience forced me to do what I said, which was try to figure out how to get called to be me and not to be just trombone guy, because I can't be everywhere and I can't just play third trombone at a big band rehearsal for $20. on Tuesday night anymore because I have to be in Denton teaching on Wednesday morning or whatever it might be. So
Right.
it's helped me to try to focus in on what's important musically to me. I will flat out say I'm not the best person with balance. Like I'm like 100 miles an hour or kind of ignoring things. Like I'm kind
Me
of
too.
so
Oh,
I can't really speak to balance. People say like, oh, work-life balance. I'm like, man, it's just all go. Like I don't know which is work and which is life, but I just go and go and go because like I have these ideas of the things that I want to do, and it includes a lot of stuff. And so I'm just like, I'm gonna go as hard as I can for as long as I can, and then if that means if I have to make another choice at that point, then I'll try. But I'm not done yet, so I gotta keep pushing. But it just these sorts of experiences of trying to balance a performing and teaching careers just make sure you have to be super organized and be able to you know learn how to say no to things and not feel bad. You have to, after so long of saying yes, it's so hard to learn to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to be organized, yeah, and figure out what are the things that you can do to optimize all of the situations. So yeah, I've been kind of doing it for a long time, so it feels almost like second nature, and it's super weird to not have gotten on a plane for 4 months after
Yeah.
all this time. But it's hard. Like even when I wasn't doing the teaching, I was touring a lot more. Well, obviously more than right now, but and just so it's like I was hardly ever in the city anyway. So kind of one thing led to another, and that sort of like direction kind of showed itself. You figure out like these are the things that are important to me, and these are the gigs that I will, play regardless, and these are the ones that I can let go, and these are the opportunities that I really cherish. Like making time and space to come to Rockport and teach is really important to me when we can do it, because it's like a really special experience for those campers and to hang with everybody else that also teaches there and everything. So you just kind of figure out, it helps you figure out what's important, I guess. And, I still have a lot of unchecked things on my to-do list in New York. So I'm not done with New York, and that's for sure.
Yeah, awesome. That's super inspiring. So, one more sort of question topic before we move into the Q&A. So at Jazz Lincoln Center this month, we are centering our energy around the idea, the meaning, and the spirit of the word freedom. And it's been really interesting seeing the Jazz Lincoln Center social media posts. People are posting with hashtag what freedom means to me. And so for me this week, I posted a little clip of a composition of mine that I wrote focused on the idea of freeing yourself from internal and external expectations. And so I'd love to hear, if I know a lot of your compositional work, but maybe you could share with the audience, any inspiration that has, gone into your music from that idea of freedom, or what freedom really means to you, either musically or globally. Of course, right now it's a very important thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can say for sure musically that I found recently how entrapped people are by like the nuts and bolts of what scale do I play and what notes go on this chord and what, blah, 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 blah. And it's like every musician that I look up to uh, plays with that sense of freedom, and to me, the freedom comes from complete mastery of the subject matter. That's how you get free on your instrument technically. In terms of navigating harmony, you have to at least attempt to master, like as best you can, those ideas. So to me, like in terms of music, that idea of achieving freedom comes through the hard work. It comes through going through all of the technical studies, the harmony, the learning piano when you don't want to learn piano because you're not a pianist, all of these things that are like super, almost cliche as a jazz educator that you see in students. And it's like that hard work is what allows your heroes to be free to improvise and really create. I was doing an interview a couple days ago, last week, and I got talking about how something that I think is really missing in the conversation about improvised music and great jazz artists is the conversation around how there's an equivalency in the way that when we're in state and in flow. You know, some people call it flow and state. There's different words for this, but when a musician is like really hitting at the highest level and is having either like an out of body experience or like really connecting, the music is amazing. We all chase that feeling again, right? And we chase it because it's like transcending the human experience. And it's like, wow, this person is achieving this level of human ability where it's like instant creativity, channeling exactly what they're thinking, just like someone like Michael Jordan or LeBron James or somebody in the sports area is doing in those clutch moments of a game. And there's not really much of a comparison in terms of like the mental capacity, the reps that go into it, and the freedom that's created by this constant battle of trying to get better every day and every day and every day. And you know, I think that it's just as important. Like the music is amazing, but for people that don't have an entry point into the music, I think it's an interesting way to talk to them about, well, check this out. Like these people are creating spontaneously in the moment. They've mastered this music in such a way where they're like, it's almost like telekinesis between the band members, and they're like operating as, you know, greater as a whole than they are as individual people. And it's not that common among things that you do in the day, but to just put it in front, like go and watch how those people are interacting and how they're playing together. I don't know. I've been thinking about how that can be like maybe a gateway to allowing more people to get interested in the music and going to see the music live, especially after this is done. You know, people complaining about the live streams and everything. It's like that's the part that's missing, is that magic, spontaneity, and creativity. So I started going down that path, and I kind of avoided the rest of your question, but that's you know, to me, I just wanted to bring that up because I've been thinking about it a lot, and I really think that us musicians need to speak that truth more, that our heroes, these great people that we look up to, are like transcending human achievement. It's like it's real time, and you're making it happen. Art is happening in real time. It's, you know, you don't get to go back and do it again. You know, you're in flow, and so many people are trying to get to that state of being so connected to the world and the energy, however you want to call it, you know. And so I just like, I don't know, I've been thinking about that a lot. But getting back to your question of freedom, yeah. So in terms of music, that's what I really think, and you have to master everything in terms of being able to express yourself. So that's kind of what it means to me right now.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. So, Chloe, I think we can open it up for questions from the audience.
Okay, amazing. While everyone is typing out or thinking about what question they want to ask, I just want to say, if you're just joining us, this is the Well-Rounded Musician with Alexa Tarantino in conversation with Nick Finzer, brought to you live by Jazz at Lincoln Center here in New York City. Before we start with the Q&A, I just want to thank Alexa and Nick, as well as all of our supporters who contribute to the cause and help us do what we can to serve the global jazz community. We absolutely would not be here without you all, and your support means everything. So if you're here in Zoom and you'd like to ask a question, feel free to use that raise hand function if you'd like to ask your question directly. Just click the participants tab at the bottom of your screen, and then the raise hand button. That way I can unmute you so you can ask your question. If you're feeling shy, feel free to put your question in the chat here to me, and I will get to as many as we can. For those of you watching on Facebook, either on Alexa's page or on our page at Jazz Lincoln Center, please type your questions in. We are monitoring and would love to hear from you as well. So let's take a first question. This is someone that was watching on your page, Alexa, and they ask, they're called Selmer, although I believe that's a brand of saxophone, right? I don't know if that's your name, but if it is, they ask, what are some tips for people who are having trouble with a lack of discipline or focus? It's a two-parter, so that's the first part. The second part is tips on starting a nonprofit. This person used to work on Wall Street and are going to hit up some old contacts to fund a program that teaches kids music online. Are there any tips on the practical steps required to starting a nonprofit? So again, part one, tips for people having trouble with discipline or focus. Part two, nonprofit help.
Go for it, Nick.
You want me to, which part do you want me to tackle
I mean,
first?
you just go for it, and I'll chime in afterwards.
Okay,
They're
so
they're sticking.
yeah, I mean, I'll just say in terms of discipline and focus, um, it's a little tough for me to speak to because that's like something that I don't have issues with too much because it's been drilled into me for so long. Um, but to create more discipline, I really think having a planner and a plan and setting goals that are beyond what you think you can achieve is important to make sure that even if you don't achieve them, you're still getting close, right? So if you get 90% of a huge thing, you're doing way better than if you didn't try at all. So for me, that's important. Um, and just the discipline. I think studying an instrument teaches you discipline. Studying music teaches you discipline, especially a brass instrument. If you don't play that thing, it's going to come back to bite you the next day, you know? So if you study a brass instrument, for example, you'll definitely experience that firsthand. But to me, it's just about planning and being effective with time, whether you have 15 minutes or 15 hours to practice, you know, you still have to make the time to do it, just like anything else. You have to make the time, you know, for your family. You have to make the time for not doing anything. You have to make time to practice, just the same. So for me, I'm a planner. So plan, if you want to try it, get a physical planner. I'm way better with a physical planner than on the computer. I mean, I guess maybe I'm old in that sense, but I'm only 32, so I don't know. But for me, that's super important. And then the nuts and bolts of nonprofit, that part of the question. Number one, realize if you really need to have a nonprofit. I've talked to a lot of people that think they need to have a nonprofit when really all they need is a fiscal sponsor. A fiscal sponsor is an organization that can accept tax deductible donations on your behalf so you can run your program. Different situations are better for different people. But if you are a nonprofit, you have to have a board and you have to have board meetings and you have to follow a lot of strict rules. You have to stay within IRS guidelines. You have to make sure that you set your mission to be both broad enough and specific enough at the same time, meaning broad enough to cover all the activities that you might want to do into the future, but specific enough that the IRS will allow you to incorporate as a nonprofit and operate. So it's pretty important to like decide, like, do I really need to do this? It does cost time and money to put into it, and just to have it. I mean, I've seen people that start them and then do nothing with them, and I'm like, why did you bother going through all of that? But there's a lot of ongoing stuff. So if I couldn't do it on my own. There's a board of 4 or 5 people that do different things for our nonprofit, and the most effective use of it that I see is either like with big institutions, obviously, and then like groups of musicians. There's that form chamber ensembles, for example, in the classical world. And then it's starting to trickle its way over into the jazz world and crossover world where, having a nonprofit allows you to you get those donations, apply for grants and stuff like that. But in terms of starting it, you got to make sure you have somebody that can keep you organized and on task. You got to have enough people to have a board. It's got to be an odd number of people. And you have to, well, ideally you don't have to, but it'd be great if you had somebody that was really good at fundraising, because that's the most important part of a nonprofit. Being able to achieve its mission is by having the ability to do so, and that often is a financial restraint or restriction. So those would be a couple things to think about, but really consider whether you need to have the nonprofit or you just think that you need to have it. You could actually do the thing you want to do by getting a fiscal sponsor that could handle all that paperwork stuff for you.
Okay, interesting. Well, I can't really chime in on the nonprofit front, but a fiscal sponsor sounds real good right about now. Let's move on to the next question, Chloe. Thank you, Selmer.
Great. Let's move on to the next question. So this question is from Lewis, I believe. Yes, Lewis wants to get each of your advice on building and performing solos.
Okay, so I'll kick it off, I guess. I think this goes along with what Nick was saying about, admiring our heroes and sometimes we're able to reach that moment of where you're really not thinking and you're just playing and improvising in the moment. But I think that's the goal. And again, it does require complete knowledge, in my opinion, of like chords and scales and voice leading and common tones and all that stuff. So I like to do a lot of exercises behind the scenes when I'm practicing. I like to, if I'm working on a tune or a particular song form or working on a song in a particular key, I like to do a lot of like restrictive or parameter exercises, maybe where I'm working on a specific resolution, or I'm working on approaching all of the dominant chords with a particular extension, like sharp 11s or tritone substitutions or something like that, where I'm really drilling one idea home throughout a chorus or a few choruses, and then stop and assign myself a new idea and then give it a try. And so I guess for me that feels like I've got all my tools in my toolbox when I go to actually make music. When I'm actually playing with people, I want to forget about all of that stuff and, listen to what the drummer is doing, listen to what the piano player is doing, and pull all of those things, all of those extensions, all of those rhythms. And I just want to be able to have the ability to grab all of those things in real time. And I guess the only other thing I would add is that I'm a big fan of just like slow development, thematic and motivic development. So I like to try to leave, like, if there were a picture perfect Alexa solo, I guess maybe it would be like leaving a lot of space in the beginning and choosing just some really colorful notes, and growing a motive out of that and letting it kind of grow and grow and grow. And lots of communication with the rhythm section. I just love that. So Nick, what about you?
That's interesting. I was thinking of two totally different things than what you mentioned, and that's super interesting. I also do the same with the restriction exercises, and I make my students do that, and they hate me for that.
Yeah.
But other than that, I had a teacher at Eastman, and I want to bring this up because it was something I never thought about until he mentioned it, which was the ending of your solo. You can't have a great solo without a great ending. Right? Because if you just kind of plop to the finish line, everyone's going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. Because people remember like the exciting moments and the beginning and the end, right? If you think about a movie or any story. So he had me transcribe, I think the assignment was 10 or 15 last 4 bars of a solo. Like just transcribe, find great endings to solos. And how do they end? How do they hand off? How do they think about how they're going to make that transition out of the solo? And that helps you to create a great solo because you put a nice period on the end of it.
Yeah.
And so that's number one. And the second really quick thing I'll just say is that the way that Alexa is talking about a solo is a very classic way to develop a solo. But I encourage you to think about all the different shapes that you can have in a solo based on, like that's a really important one to be able to do. But it's like when you listen to different people improvise, try and see if you could map out with a shape. I'm drawing in the air, I guess, but like, does it go up and then down and then build up again, or does it go up and then like a what do you call it? Like a steps? Like, does it keep the intensity keep growing chorus after chorus after chorus, or do they start hot and do they come down and kind of build it back to the melody? Like, there's a lot of different ways. So having that big picture awareness, that macro awareness, can be also important to developing a solo. Because if you just go with what's in your mind, like I'm going to play it this way, you might not be listening. And it's always better when you're listening.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. And thanks, Lewis, for your question.
Thanks, Lewis. All right, let's grab a question from the Zoom chat. This question is from Chris. He asks, professionally, have you had many positive outcomes from the quarantine situation?
Ooh. Chris, right? You said Chris?
Chris, yeah.
Nick, how about you go first?
Yeah, sure. Just this week, Downbeat article came out that I was the rising star or whatever for jazz trombone. So that was a positive outcome for me. I mean, I suppose that's like a year's worth of work that culminated at a happenstance moment during this time. But no, there's been good things. Like I said, I've gotten so far down my list. I've been able to do the stuff that seems like I'll never get to. And for someone who is a planner like me, that's so exciting. Like, I don't even know how to tell you how exciting it is to actually get down that list to those things that are so important to do, but I've never find time to do. So yeah, and reading more and running more, man, there's been positive things, but obviously it's a tough time.
Yeah. Um, I actually have a list of the things that I did so that like I feel if I wake up and I'm like I don't want to do anything today, which we can't can't do nothing. But I look at my list and I'm like, okay, you've been productive. Like this is good because for
Yeah.
me the months have just blended together. Like I feel like March, April, and May, like I don't know where they went. It feels like they got swallowed up. I can't remember. I've missed people's birthdays. I've missed all this stuff. You think that you would wake up and be totally on it, and I feel like I've just been in a daze. So I appreciate this question because it's making me think about what's been going on. I did release a record during this time, which is happy, happy moment. And it's moving out there, getting, I guess, played on the radio station. So it's always nice to release new music. Usually by the time a record comes out, I'm like totally sick of the music and I don't even listen to the record itself, but it is nice to get the feedback. And yeah, I mean, I've tried to put out a bunch of online projects. Pianist Stephen Feifke and I have done a weekly live stream concert every Sunday, and so through that, we've been able to donate a portion of our proceeds to organizations supporting artists during this time, supporting Black Lives Matter organizations during this time. So we've been really happy to be able to give back in that way. And then we also did the virtual jazz camp that I was talking about last week, which is called A Step Ahead Jazz, Summer Jazz Online. And actually, our events, for anybody who missed it, are still available to stream for a certain amount of time. So I'll have Chloe leave the link there. But just, I guess, figuring out what to do, how to make things happen has been positive. I am starting to feel pretty burnt out, and I've like talked to Nick and been like, I think I'm going to take a sabbatical,
Yeah,
a
both of us.
virtual sabbatical. But I am trying to slow down a little bit now and just maybe, we got people have a lot of virtual things happening, projects, recordings, and I think it's time for me maybe to just think a little more about what I'm doing and maybe spend some of that time like running and playing with dogs and all that stuff. So yeah,
Totally.
thanks, Chris.
Great. Okay, this is a cool question from Steven on Facebook. Steven says, as a free jazz guitarist, I rarely listen to other guitarists. What are your thoughts on being influenced by musicians that play different instruments than yourself?
Do you want me to jump in? I can jump
Yeah,
in.
sure, yes.
Yeah. I think that I think it's inevitable that you're influenced by just about every single thing that you hear. And I think it's a little bit of, you know, a fallacy to think that you're not, And so you can develop a lot of things, even if they're things that you don't want to do, by listening to all different types of music and all different types of players and improvisers and playing free or playing tunes or whatever. There's something to be gleaned from whatever you listen to. I have had really in-depth phases of my life where I'm checking out only pianists. Like I had a long time checking out Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea, and then I had a long time I was like obsessed with Joshua Redman, and then obsessed with Pat Metheny, and then Brad Meldau, but I would always come back to my favorite trombonists like J.J. Johnson and Curtis Fuller, like after going on these escapades, and then when I would come back, I'd be like, I'm home, So like for me, it's important to have context of your instrument, but if that's not your thing, that's not your thing, and it doesn't have to be. I always tell students that I'm talking to, or just people, it's like whatever decisions you're making those decisions for now. You don't have to continue down that path. If you want to change, there's nothing stopping you from, doing something different or playing in a different scene, or just deciding you're going to do something else. So, yeah, I just think you're influenced by everything you listen to, and I definitely have been influenced by non-people of my instrument.
Yeah, I agree completely. And then I will take it a step further. And I think now I'm realizing the amazing, vast, like area that I have not explored, which is just being inspired by other mediums of art. And, whether it's like a book that you're reading or like a scientist that you're researching or something like that. For me, compositionally right now, during my sabbatical, I'm thinking about trying to use other things to inspire me, because at a certain point for me, I can get a little bit like jazzed out, actually. Like, I'm not one of those people that can have music playing all the time. In fact, like, I get kind of stressed if there's like a lot of music playing in the background, because if it's jazz, I start hearing, like, I just want to listen to it. Like, I start like fingering along with what's going on. So, a goal for me is that like I want to make more focused, dedicated, just listening time, and also try to be inspired by other things. So I'm just putting that out there for the people. Thank you for your question.
Great, thanks for your question. Okay, so we're getting close to the end here. I want to take one more question, but before we get to our final question, I just want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank Alexa, and I want to thank Nick for being here with us tonight on this Thursday evening. Well, Thursday evening for us, whatever time it is for you out there. I saw lots of love on Facebook from all over the world. So we appreciate you guys watching. So just a quick thing, we have a ton of upcoming events and classes with Jazz Lincoln Center. The schedule is going to change a bit throughout the summer weeks. So just keep track of what we're doing on our website, jazz.org, or on our social media pages. It's Jazz at Lincoln Center on Facebook and jazz.org on Instagram and Twitter. There's some really exciting stuff coming down the pipeline, and we really want you guys to come be a part of it. So stay tuned for that. We will be back next week with a new episode of The Well-Rounded Musician at this new time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Alexa will be in conversation with Cecile McLaurin-Salvant. I'm very excited. We love her. So check back then to join the Zoom or to watch on Facebook Live. The last thing I'll say is to thank you guys again for being a part of the community. If it is within your means, please consider making a donation. Jazz Lincoln Center is a nonprofit, speaking of nonprofits, here in New York, and we are committed to entertaining, enriching, and expanding a global community for jazz. But we cannot do that without your help, so contributions of any amount are extremely meaningful. To our supporters and donors who are watching tonight, we cannot thank you enough. And again, just keep track of everything we're doing on those social media pages. That's it for me, and I'm just going to turn it over to get our final question from our favorite, Mr. Les Rose.
Woohoo!
There you are.
Oh, I'm cold.
Hi, Les.
You guys, by the way, I'm multitasking. This is Downtime with Samantha.
Oh,
Beautiful.
nice.
Beautiful.
So if you want a sabbatical, just take an hour off, put on a great webinar or a great album, and pet your cat.
I love it. That's awesome.
You guys inspire me so much. Nick, I have been a big fan of yours. It's amazing, this medium, to be able to meet people that I just get to see on smallslive.com, and have been following your albums Here and Now, your performances with one of my tenor monster heroes, Lucas Pino. Just awesome, awesome. And your energy and positive outlook, I feel in a way I've been doing that for 50 years, and I'm getting ready to do it for another 50 years. And to see that you guys are dialed into that in this era is going to be the whole difference. And I think you're completely correct that this is where the industry is going to go. Those that have a little of each, the artistic, the mastery, the willingness to put themselves out in the business aspect of it, and even the technological aspect. So congratulations. Wonderful to meet you. I have a very quick technology question. Do you see, and this is in particular for teaching, we're going to have a lot of issues with teaching instrumental music in the days and months to come. And I see a lot of the band directors struggling with the Zoom, not so much the Zoom, but the virtual band kind of thing. and you put it all together and it's great, but you have one song and that's it. Do you see the technology moving to the point where you could say to a band or, you know, a group of professional musicians, okay, here's our project. We're doing an album using that virtual band concept. But the difference is it's not just going to be one song that goes on YouTube and see you later. We're going to see it all the way through to an album. Do you see the technology moving so that one of you guys who might be a little more technically advanced to do the production part of it can take that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just jump right in and just say, first of all, thanks, Les, for following, and it's great to meet you too. But to answer your question, the technology does exist, especially if you want to do it, like you're saying, like not just one song, but still this virtual environment. If you're talking about live playing together, we're still, I think, a ways away. There is some technology that I find, there's a guy, and this is very, very specific, but there's a guy named Mark, he teaches, a trombone player, he teaches Mark Desson. He teaches at UC San Diego. He's developed some technology to be able to do collaborative performances from like San Diego to Europe, and they've had live interaction. So the technology exists, but it's very, very, very expensive, and you need very, very fast internet connections. And so even like with just students, if they can just plug their laptop into Ethernet cable, and I know it's like real old school at this point, but the speed is so much faster and a much better experience. So anyone that's doing that wants one hack to make your experience better, just get your computer plugged into the actual router, not the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
I completely agree with the Ethernet. That is the best way to go. I could almost have no lag if both parties
Yeah.
have a great connection. There's almost no lag. So it's getting there, and all the best. I sent a couple of students to North Texas in my career.
Beautiful.
Good for you.
Nice. Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Les. Thanks for joining us. Thank you all for joining us for the second installment of our special guest series featuring Nick Finzer. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling super inspired. And Nick, it was just awesome to see you. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And everybody, Nick's information is in the Zoom group chat, and I think we can add it into the Facebook.
Yeah, we're posting it on Facebook as well.
Amazing. So everyone's going to know where to find you. And that's that. Round of applause for Chloe, the fabulous video moderator. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all next week for Cecile.
Yeah, guys, have a great week, and we will see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye. See you guys.